it's more important for me to grow well and grow right and slowly. And then when we want to, like, we'll have all of the systems in place that I can just go, all right, let's turn it on. And then just like start cranking it out like crazy.
This is the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast, where we inspire solopreneurs like you to win back your life by teaching you how to build businesses that maximize your freedom, flexibility, and income, all without trading time for money. Here's your host, Nick Murphy.
Hey there, my friend, and welcome to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. My name is Nick Murphy, and I'm honored to be your host. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you are a frequent listener, you know I love you. Thanks for coming back and checking out yet another episode. If you're new, listen, I'm really thrilled that you're here, regardless of how you got here. If it's somebody that told you about the show, if you discovered it on your own through your app, or if you just got lucky and landed here, my goal the next 35, 40 minutes is to give you a ton of value and inspire you to get in the game by creating a lifestyle business. Or if you're already in the game, give you some tips and tricks and share stories from other lifestyle entrepreneurs that have been successful, kind of pull back the layers of their story and give you some insight into what works so that you can learn some lessons through their stories and not have to go through all this painful experience on our own. To that point, I've got a great story for you today. And today's guest is Jeff Large. And in our conversation, Jeff and I discuss why he left his career as a teacher to build a company, the lessons he learned along the way, and he shares some extremely thoughtful advice for any new or aspiring lifestyle business owner looking to create freedom in their life. I'm not going to make you wait any longer. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Jeff Large. My guest today is Jeff Large. Jeff is a podcast producer and strategist. He leads his team at Come Alive Creative and producing podcasts for businesses and brands. Some of his favorite things include family, board games, and learning something new every single day. Jeff, thanks for being here. How are you?
Nick, I'm well. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. You have an interesting story. I want to just, before we kind of get into what you're doing now and that entrepreneurial journey, let's just start at the beginning, talk about kind of when you came out of school, what you thought you were going to be doing for a career and how that was going up until that moment that you took the plunge into entrepreneurship.
I wasn't sure. I was actually not sure for quite a while. I suffered. I've been able to manage it more, I think, lately as I grew up, but I was always afraid of failure. And with something like a career, obviously that's a pretty big decision. You're going to school for it and all these other things. And I wasn't 100% sure. And so I started just at a community college and ended up deciding on teaching. And I've just always had a passion for working with youth. I worked at a homeless shelter and was in charge of, kind of ran the after school program for a while during college and just did different things, helped out at my church with the youth group and such. And so went through, was able to get a teaching spot pretty much right after I graduated. And so I taught for, I think in total 7 years. I'm not sure what information would be most helpful, but it was middle school for about 5. I taught language arts middle school. And then I taught, technology for another 2 after that. It was at a charter school. And so it was like basically pre-K through 8th grade. And that was that stint.
That is a lot. So in your life as a teacher, was it everything you expected it to be when you were in school going that route? Obviously, you have a kind of a place of service that it sounds like you come from, being involved in the church and wanting to be a teacher. What about your lifestyle or what you were getting out of that career path was kind of missing in terms of what you ideally wanted that made you venture out and eventually become an entrepreneur?
There was a variety of things. If I can first touch base on some of the positives. At the time, we had an amazing administration. I owe a lot of just kudos and respect to my principal of the time. He taught me a lot of things. He was just a really great guy. My students have always loved my students, and that's probably the thing that I miss the most walking away from teaching is just not being able to hang out with kids every day because they're usually cooler than adults. The way they look at things. And now it's like I get to live and hang out with my own children, but just not as many other people's. And so it's like there was plenty of things that were going well, but one of the biggest things, especially if people are teachers or have teachers in their lives, was the time demands. Teaching is easily a job that can never end. There's a lot of jobs out there that are like this, but it would be very, very easy for me to put in a 50, 60 hour work week and then come home and have to spend an additional 10 grading papers or whatever it might be. Beyond that, beyond the time commitments, the pay wasn't fantastic. My wife and I, it was important for her at the time with our kids being younger that she was home with them. That was a decision that we both made. So we were a single income family, and we weren't drowning, but we were never ahead either. We had a pretty simple lifestyle, and I mean, we still do, but it was a variety of factors. And then also we had some significant changes in our admin team where my principal that I mentioned retired, and the leadership that came in, I did not personally feel like we're making decisions in the best interest of the students. And it was one of those things that I was willing to plant my flag on, and it was creating tension. And so there was a variety of reasons that really culminated to my wife and I talked about it, and we planned on me originally leaving a year later than I did. So I ended up resigning a year faster than I thought I was going to.
It's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of just values and what you wanted to be involved in day to day from a new leadership standpoint. Long weeks, single income, and not a lot of money paid to teachers. Had you always dabbled in web development or digital marketing? We'll get into kind of what you started, but I'm just curious if you were doing any of those things on the side or had a background in that while you were a teacher or even beforehand.
I've been the kind of person that I've always been driven, but I always had kind of a primary job, and then I would usually fill a secondary or even sometimes 3 jobs. And usually that second job was always something fun. And so even before any of this, I was dabbling in multimedia. There was a really good program at my high school, and then it just kind of took off from there, where I was interested in things like video production. I ran a local cable station, and it kind of got me involved in multimedia. I was a musician as well, and so I started to learn the ropes with audio and recording and things along those lines. And then I think it was mostly because of being a musician, we needed a way to promote ourselves. And so I ended up being the person charged with figuring out how to use websites and things. And so like the first time I ever did development was in Dreamweaver, like in the early 2000s and like
old school.
Yeah. Things along those lines. And then it kind of faded out for a little while, and I focused on different things. And then we started a different business. My cousin and my wife and I started a board game publishing company probably in like 2014 or so, while I was teaching still. And that was the first like taste of business that I received. And we got back into things like podcasting and web development, or I did, because of that, and learning about marketing. And then it really just took off from there.
What does a board game publishing agency do? I've never even heard of such a thing.
Think of like a book publisher, except with a board game. And so most people, when I say board games, think of things like Monopoly or Battleship or Candyland and all those normal games that you see at stores. The ones that would be considered, there's a whole world, man, that is like just amazing indie games and amazing publishers with depth and complexity and a lot of fun. And so gateways, what would be considered a quote unquote gateway game, is like Ticket to Ride, King of Tokyo, Munchkin. There's a lot of games that you might see, or like Pandemic has gotten a little more popular. There's just different ones. And then beyond that, there's this whole world. And so essentially our company functioned as we went out, found a game designer, someone who created the game, signed the game on, and then basically went through all of the steps, curating it, making it better than it was to begin with, finding manufacturing, finding distribution, getting it published, and like contracting illustrators and designers and like all that stuff to make the game possible.
That sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. I tell my listeners every week, there's just so many different things that people do. And I love this show because I get to talk to people that have done a whole lot of stuff. Very rarely do I have a guest who is doing the same thing today that they set out to do when they first started without dabbling in a couple other businesses. So if you're one of the listeners out there that's thinking about, I don't know exactly what I want to do, I'm kind of interested in this, my advice would be to go do that. Jeff, you've been through that. How much of that experience in that publishing business kind of translated favorably in terms of helping you be successful with your digital marketing agency today?
Everything I've done. I literally was just having this conversation right before I jumped on your cast. I was interviewing a gentleman, Alex Nerney, and he went through his own kind of journey, different woes and things, and ended up becoming a pretty successful blogger with a few different sites that he runs. And the thing that we were talking about is that I don't really think there's anything unique or special or different about my experiences, like what I've done, but it's more of my perspective on them. And what I mean by that is like, I can almost look back to every single thing, positive and negative, that I've gone through so far and know for a fact that it has absolutely influenced my capacity now to be a business owner and to run a team and to work in audio. And it's like, I look at being a musician, I look at being a teacher and understanding how to diagnose a particular, like identify and diagnose somebody's problem. I look at, like you said, my first taste of business and how it all works with like board games of all things. And so it's all of these experiences have absolutely made it possible what we're doing now.
Let's talk about your journey in the web dev and digital marketing agency. It looks like you started that about 6 years ago. Kind of walk us through what you were planning on doing when the doors opened and any shifts that have taken place. It kind of sounds like you're much more niched now. Just walk us through that journey and kind of what your experiences were and kind of the whys. I think there's a lot of folks in our audience that are either in the game already, kind of early stage in their entrepreneurial journey, or people thinking about it. And just, I love pulling out, it's really, there's a lot of experience there. And so it's kind of a big question. But if we can strip out the things that kind of, what was the vision? What information did you come away with once you started down that path that might have changed the design or the direction that you wanted to take your company?
I'll give you the overview, and then if there's like specifics afterwards, you can drill down into whatever interests you the most. The short story would be, this was at the time that I was co-running the board game thing, and I was teaching. I ended up putting in my resignation letter, and beforehand I was just dabbling a bit. Like I think at the time, like most people are like, I was doing a side hustle and it started to outpace my primary income, so I quit. And like for us, I had one client, and I think the client was paying us like $15 an hour or something like that at the time. And my wife and I took a very stoic view on the whole thing. And like if you've read 4 Hour Work Week, Ferriss talks about it too, where you're like, okay, what is literally the worst case scenario? And we looked at it and we're like, okay, we run out of money in 6 months and I go back to teaching. And we're like, okay, why not?
Fear setting. I love it. Fear setting exercise.
Yeah. And so we did it, and we shot for it. And it was just, in the beginning, it was just me and basically 2 other graphic designers. And so they handled all my designs, and I did all the dev and the building, like both the front and the back end of the sites. And like most business owners who actually want to run a company opposed to just be a freelancer, I started to build out a team. Our natural progression as we learned, and again, I think most of this is probably common for people that have gone through the journey, learning the importance of niching and specialization. And so we dabbled in some different things. We niched down on e-commerce for a little while, and it got to a point, I would say probably 3-4-ish years into Come Alive. I want to say probably 3. I'm trying to run back the dates through my head now. But about 3 years in, we started to round back out again, where we were doing larger custom builds. And it was to a point where it's like, I wasn't handling the dev really anymore. And a lot of the things that we were beginning to do were completely outpacing what personally I was capable of. And so there was elements of that made me nervous. There's a lot about the commoditization of the web development space that I found extremely frustrating from a sales standpoint. It's a very misleading product. I think a lot goes into a very good website. Everything from how it's coded to where it's hosted to how you write your copy to user interface and all of this stuff. And most of the time clients would be like, is it pretty? Does it have the information that I gave you? And it's like just such a huge disconnect. And so we were also doing some different digital marketing means too, and one of them being podcasting. And so I think I had 1 or 2 clients that we were producing a podcast for. And I've always sought out advice from other people. So I have kind of a makeshift advisory board, and I had a business coach for several years. And between talking with one of my friends / advisors and my wife, we decided to overhaul things. And this was probably about 2.5, 3 years ago now, that I gutted all of our services except for podcasting. We offboarded all of our clients over a course of probably, depending on, some of them we could immediately stop with, and then some we had service contracts with. And so we had to wait a couple months. But I'd say within 4 or 5 months of making that decision, we only had our podcasting clients left. And then we went out and were searching for more and completely focused on podcast production from that point forward.
Did you do that primarily to scale? Was it just, I wanted one product, one service that we can really master, that we can do well and do quickly? Was it the customization of the website build? The commoditization makes complete sense to me. But were you trying to get away from such custom work and into something that was easier to scale and grow a team around?
No, actually I wasn't. And that's even something now, even the way that we've structured ourselves, it's scalable to a point. We intentionally keep a smaller client base just so we can give each person the care. And I mean, I know a lot of the times you hear that stuff and it's like, it's gimmicky, but it's like, it's just legit for us. Like I've been really intentional and kind of my right-hand gal on the team. The two of us have talked about this more and more. And my wife's not part of the company, but obviously she still has a heavy influence and in thought process and stuff. And so like, as we talk about it, like it's more important for me to grow well and grow right and slowly. And then when we want to, like, we'll have all of the systems in place that I can just go, all right, let's turn it on. And then just like start cranking it out like crazy. I would say at the moment, like, of why I did that, that's hard. It's really hard. There's certain things that I think I've come across, and I don't mean to give you just a cop-out answer, but intuition honestly plays a big role. I felt like it was the next right move. A lot of the things that I look for and I try to be present to is what is the right thing to do in this scenario. Elements of what do I feel peace with, and knowing my skill set, kind of watching the industry and seeing preemptively that we were in the beginning of a decent wave within the podcasting. So there was a variety of things from, I think if I had to name it, probably my own intuitions, seeing that it would be a good opportunity and knowing that it was something that we really could own. Like it was a talent that we could pull off as a team.
Let's segue right into that. What does Come Alive Creative do? You mentioned it's a little unique. The website's beautiful, very story branded and gorgeous. So you obviously have, like, I always love talking to people and knowing their background and kind of design and coding, and you can see how much of that has kind of inspired this site here. But just take a second and kind of plug what Come Alive Creative does, who it might be for, and just dig a little deeper on what makes you unique in terms of podcast production.
So we're looking at podcast strategy and production. And the easiest way for me to explain this is that if you are a person or a company that needs help, there's basically 3 kinds of help that you can get. One would be when you hire an expert or a coach. And that type of person is really, really great for someone who wants to do it themselves, but don't necessarily want to spend all the time learning. So they can expedite that process. They're usually worth it, assuming that they know what they're talking about, that they've been through it. They'll help you from everything from how to pick equipment and use it to how to structure your show and target it and all these things. And so they can be really, really helpful. But at the end of the day, that's for someone that wants to do it themselves. The second tier, and what I've found most popular in terms of competition, would be what I consider technical help. And this is really, really great for the type of person that knows what they want to record. They have a general understanding of how to get it recorded, but they don't necessarily want to deal with things like editing, writing show notes, in the other elements of getting it online, getting it on iTunes. Like those things can get confusing. And so you basically show up and record your show, do your thing, and then send off your audio, and then this agency or person or whoever takes over. And it's like, normally it's a reoccurring type of monthly fee. You're getting several episodes, weekly episodes done, or whatever it is. Where we've positioned ourselves, we're looking at it more of a turnkey solution. We've broken it down into 4 parts. It's the planning, it's the actual production, which is basically the technical that I just said. It's the promotional aspects of getting it published and marketed and all of that. And then the analytics of tracking that progress and seeing if we're hitting our goals. And so we work well with it's more often companies or teams or organizations that understand there's some really great opportunities to be had within podcasting, but they either don't have the knowledge or the bandwidth to pull it off. And so we become a partner in that sense of offering more of a turnkey solution. And at the end of the day, podcasting's the medium, but what this really is it's a digital marketing investment. It just happens to be done with podcasting as opposed to written or visual or some other medium.
Love that. Really smart niche, and certainly a need there as more and more companies and brands get into podcasting. I think, those of us that have home studios like I do and upload stuff to Drive and hire an editor, that's one segment of the podcast community. The other segment is certainly these companies and brands that are realizing just how many people they have. In terms of promotion, just this is my own curiosity as a podcaster, I guess. When you're doing promotion for a brand that has a built-in list of customers and probably a massive email list by comparison to those small folks like us, what are you measuring? What's the goal in terms of distributing and marketing and really measuring that success? Are the goals the same, like grow the show, get subscribers, or is it just completely different?
No, it's not same at all. It really depends on the client. There's an article that I have, and I can share with you. It'd be relevant in this sense. I have it's called, I think it's like the nine ROI for podcasting, or some title relevant to that. And it's looking at what do we want for a return on investment. And so I can tell you, like, for example, we had one client from the past, an older client, and the things that we were gathering from their show is they wanted to build their e-commerce SaaS company. They wanted to grow their authority in a space to just be known as an e-commerce expert, obviously grow awareness around their software, etc. So we were interviewing the people that were using their software. We could see just based on the analytics who was performing well. We featured them on the show. And by default, we thought we'd hit those goals, plus be able to create a better community of existing users just by featuring them on the cast. But one of the huge successes that we took away is I co-hosted that show with one of their customer specialists, like customer success specialists. And the amount of information that we were able to do from like a customer research standpoint was hugely worth it, because we could hear their wins, their losses. We could see from a listenership standpoint of what they cared about. Like when we had certain episodes, I think, say like one of our Facebook ad episodes really stuck out compared to the other ones in terms of topics. And so their content team knew then to start writing about more niche topics of that stuff. You take another example where if you're shooting for, maybe your goal is sponsorships and ad revenue, you're going to create a different kind of show. You need more mass appeal. You need to not only think about existing podcast listenership, but you need to think about the 75% of Americans that aren't listening to podcasts yet. And so the way that you niche and develop and structure a show like that will look tremendously different. Again, one more other example is we have another one that is for a client of ours. It's in the home service space. And they specifically service home service professionals, so plumbers, electricians, etc. And they're teaching them how to do the marketing aspect. Like that's the service they provide for them, is so they can go out and do their thing. But we've been able to have interviews with a lot of people from their team, with a lot of these more savvy business owners that are their clients. And for us, it's not so much about volume as much as it is intake. And so we can see from different tools that we have that there's like 110 listener or 110% completion rate on some of these. At first, we were like, what the heck is that? Like, how did they finish at 110%? But it's because people are going back to re-listen. And then we're like, heck yeah, like this is so good that people are listening to it more than once in order to figure out how to do that thing or to get more familiar with the company. And so again, it really boils down to your goals. And based on what your goal is, that's how we set up, okay, what analytics are we actually going to be tracking to see if we're successful or not?
Man, it's amazing just kind of hearing your background that you were a teacher and teaching kids language arts, and you've got such a clear understanding of not just what strategy and business for brands is, but podcasting and how that all fits together. For the people out there that might want to be you in 5 years, that not necessarily in the same niche, same business, but like,
that's so weird sounding.
It is, right? But like, there's somebody out there who's like, gosh, I can relate to Jeff's story about being a teacher or doing this thing. And now I hear him talk about this business and this market and this whole vocabulary that I don't even know. Speak to that listener for a second and just give them a little bit of advice on kind of where to start. And just, you've come a long way. I'm sure you always had a lot of this talent innate in you anyway, but just from an expertise, experience standpoint, how would you coach someone or encourage someone who's feeling a little, I don't know, less than qualified to just go get out there and start?
I'm sure you've gotten a lot of different kinds of advice from your guests over the episodes. What your listener needs to understand about me is I'm more of a big picture person. You've probably picked up on it already. And so I don't have any specifics. I think everyone's specifics look different. But if I had to boil down to some, and I'm sure I'll think of other things afterwards, but some of the key points: be honest with yourself. If you're not happy with your situation, recognize that. For me, I can think back of when I made the jump. I didn't want to be the person that always talked about it and didn't do anything about it. That was frustrating for me. And so just try things, really thinking about it from that whole, like you said, failure exercise, or a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, what's going to happen? Like if it's going to put your family in jeopardy, don't quit your job. Like take a baby step. But if it's something that worst case, it's like, okay, you fail. Well, everyone does. And that's fine. Like, it's okay. I had to learn that the hard way. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat any of this. Like, we've run out of money a couple times and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? And we've also seen it swing back up, and it's like, it's all over the place. And so taking the time to understand yourself, trusting that intuition, I think the perseverance is necessary. Like you have to keep pushing through. If you want it, go get it, figure out how it happens. And I think a huge one is don't underestimate networking. Like you have to align yourself with great people. I have been incredibly blessed to have met a lot of wonderful people in my life. It's okay to buy books and to learn and to talk to the right people, to invest in a business coach or find a good group that knows what they're talking about. And it's hard because everybody's journey is unique. But if you have that itch, not going to lie, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, hands down. And I don't think running a business is for everyone. I think each one of us have unique gifts. But I also think that you're probably capable of more than you're giving yourself credit for. And so it's taking these things into consideration and then actually doing something about it.
Great advice. You might have alluded to it a little bit in that answer. What's been the lowest point so far in your business?
It's funny because I said we did run out of money, and we did, but that wasn't it. Like that was kind of fun. Like at the time, it wasn't fun at all. I was incredibly stressed. But my wife she's just a cooler person than me. She was actually kind of excited. Like I know some wives out there or just significant others are going to be like, what? Like your wife was excited? Is she sick in the head? And it's like, it just gave her a really big opportunity to trust. She trusts a lot more than I do. Like I get super practical and then she's like, all right, we can do this. Let's do this. And so that was more of a learning experience. I think the thing that was the worst is I had one occasion where I had a client relationship go south, and there was a few things that we were responsible for. I don't want to make it sound one-sided. There was a couple things that we should have checked on that we didn't, that caused a couple issues. They were fixable and we did fix them and we stepped up. But the way that it was handled on their end, I did not feel like was healthy. And I had to go through probably my only major firing process, like defaulting to the contract, of exiting before the project was over. And it was not a pleasant situation because I like serving people and I really did have genuine intent to help this person. And the fact that it was not conveyed that way and that accusations were made, like I was just sick over the whole thing. It was a really, really difficult time for me to go through. But you learn from it. And I learned how to vet clients better because of it. And there's a lot of things that I was able to take away. And I ended up like, I don't talk with this person anymore, but I mean, things are fine. Our business wasn't ruined and like we're still going, and I think we're better than ever. And so it's like, we made it, but I wish I could have learned those lessons without needing to go through that particular time.
Wouldn't that be easier to not have to go through those challenges? But I think that is how we learn. That was going to be my next question. Kind of what did you learn from it? But you already went there, of course. So what I want to know now is, that's the worst point. You've been in this for 6 years. You pivoted a little bit. What's been the highest point, that moment in time, if you can remember just 1 minute where you're like, this is what it's about. This is why I do what I do. This is why I love this.
It's not a moment. It's nearly every day. It's my family. I work from home. We're doing some amazing stuff with the business. I'd say we're more busy than we ever have been. And there's like no sights of it slowing down. That being said, I'm present. Like I can be present to my family. My daughter has her workspace. Her crafting area is pretty close to my office, and she's able to come down and I can be working on an episode or something and just pause, and she'll jump up in my lap and we'll talk about life. Or I can take a break and have coffee with my wife in the morning, or my son and I can go outside and wrestle or whatever we're going to do. And just the fact that when things arise and when life happens, that I have the flexibility to feel accomplished in my business, but at the same time be able to put what I think is more important, is the relationships in my life first. I can't be more grateful. And so even when the business was low, the fact that we've maintained this freedom, like I said, I really don't have words. Like I'm just incredibly grateful that I've been graced with these opportunities.
No, I love that. We play a little game on the show here, Jeff, called Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is brought to you by Podigy. I don't do my own audio editing. I never wanted to learn how to do that. I offload it to the guys over at Podigy. They do my show notes. They make everybody sound great. And if you are a podcaster who is sitting in a home office with a studio like I am and doesn't want to learn how to do that, go ahead and talk to the guys over at Podigy. Let them know that I sent you. They will take good care of you. All right, Jeff, so you ready to play Rapid Fire? Yes,
sir.
All right, here we go. What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Everything. Either nothing or everything. That's kind of a bad answer, but one of the two.
What's your advice for your previous boss?
Love your employees more and listen more and love more.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't know. I'll never arrive.
What inspires you?
My children in general, my faith, those things.
What is your biggest fear?
Not accomplishing what I need to.
Who do you admire the most?
A lot of people, but the first one that came to mind was my wife.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
Oh, I don't care. I don't follow celebrities enough to be annoyed by one.
How do you define success?
Setting a goal and accomplishing it.
All right, last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
Jesus, why would I not? It's really hard to compare. Yeah, him and why? Just because he's Jesus. Why would I not want to hang out with him if I had the opportunity?
All right, Jeff, you survived Rapid Fire. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Knowing all that you know today about your business, if you were to go back and start over tomorrow, what is the one thing you would do differently? Or another way to think about it is, what advice would you give to someone who's starting tomorrow, knowing what you know today?
Immediately, my gut went to focus faster. And I think it's an incredibly hard lesson to learn until you go through it, because everything in your intuition says otherwise. You're going to miss out on opportunity and all these things. But I can say every single time I've made an accurate assumption based on research and things like that towards niching down a little more or focusing a little more, or even just ignoring a particular social media metric, some vanity metric, or just dropping a service, it just has been better. And so that it takes time. And I kind of feel like you almost have to go through the process. I debate on how much of going through that process helped make me successful versus just doing it. But each element of running your business, not just what you do, but all of it, figuring out how you personally can focus on the important things first, for sure, would be the spot that I would go to.
I've loved this conversation. Before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to kind of plug where you would like our listeners that have just picked up what you're putting down, a good place online to go and follow you and kind of engage with your content and your brand.
I'll give you, I know you're supposed to give one. I'm going to give two. If you want to learn more about my company, and then easily you can find me through it as well, just comealivecreative.com. The other thing that I think would be really helpful is we recently launched a new podcast, an internal one. It's geared towards digital marketers or people that just want to be digital business people. And it's a daily 90-second podcast. It features either inspiration or tactical to-do items from myself and some of the smartest digital marketers that I know. You can go to that one at creativemarketingbrief.com.
Love that. We'll put those links in the show notes. Really, really thoughtful answers. I really appreciate the way that you took some of those questions and really thought through how to answer it. Not all the guests do that. I love that about you. And you can just tell that you really, really care about your business. And there's no question in my mind as to why you've been successful. So thanks for carving out some time on your busy day and sharing some of your expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's unnecessary but kind words.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jeff Large. Like I said in the outro there, just super, super thoughtful. Really appreciated how he went way above and beyond and answered those questions, not just with what worked, but really thought about where you guys might be as listeners and what was most impactful for him or what would be most impactful for him if you were in your shoes. Really, really appreciate that. Make sure to check out both his podcasts. Lots of good resources, tips, and tricks for all of us as we continue down this journey. Those links are in the show notes. So just head over to nickmurphy.io, click the podcast tab, and everything you need for all the show notes, the best in the business, are right there. Quick reminder that if you did enjoy this episode, to subscribe, rate, and review it on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I read each and every one. That speaks directly to me. And you're also signaling to the algorithms that this is a show people want to listen to. And you're going to help that content be discovered by someone else who might see value in it. So I appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to do that in advance. I'm going to ask you every single week. If you haven't done it, please do it. It means the world to me. And you're going to help somebody out that's in a situation where they need or would like to discover the content and learn some of the lessons that we talk about here on the show. All right, that's it for me. And I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you to get in the game if you're not already. Trading time for money is no way to live. You deserve to live life on your terms, and building a lifestyle business is the fastest, safest, and best way to do just that. I appreciate you being here. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Building a Lifestyle Business Podcast. To access the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.nickmurphy.io.